So good evening, everyone. It's nice to be here tonight. It's nice to see so many of the faces that I sat with for the 8 days last week during our 8-day retreat. So I want to talk about some of the things that we're focused on in the retreat, but I have a short little story to start off. This morning, I woke up just like I always do, and I ended up in the bathroom, which is where I always end up. And I glanced to my left and I looked into the mirror and I heard myself say, "Oh, it's you." And I realized then, who was seeing and who is it that's in the mirror? It's like I walked into the bathroom and suddenly that face was there. But who am I? Who is Jeff? Who is Bon Soeng? Is it the face in the mirror or is it something else? And in that moment, I couldn't tell. But I did know that that face in the mirror surprised me. Oh, it's you. So right now, my right hand is up moving. You can see that, but how is it moving? Who's moving it? Is it the face in the mirror that's moving it? Or is there a person? Or is there something that sees the face? Because it certainly feels like I see the face in the mirror. So who's Jeff? And when I look at all of you, I see your faces and your bodies. Marshall was hitting the moktak, and I watched and I saw this motion. And I thought, who is hitting the moktak? Is it that person that I see on the screen? Look at your face on the screen right now. Who is that? Is that who you are? We don't know. But if you attach to the physical, you might miss something quite important. Who is it that allows this hand to move from here to here? So over the course of the week on retreat, we were reading from the Zen teaching of Huang Po. When we do longer retreats, I often like to bring in some of the words of the older Zen masters. And I'm going to read something actually that didn't get read during the retreat. So for those of you who are on the retreat, it's a little new for you too. But it's the first posting of his teaching. And this comes from the Chun Chao record of Zen Master Huang Po, a collection of sermons and dialogues recorded by Pei Sui while in the city of Chun Chao. So this is Huang Po, the record of Huang Po. The master said to me, all the Buddhas and all sentient beings are nothing but one mind, beside which nothing exists. This mind, which is without beginning, is unborn and indestructible. It is not green nor yellow, has neither form nor appearance. It does not belong to the category of things which exist or do not exist, nor can it be thought of in terms of new or old. It is neither long nor short, big nor small, for it transcends all limits, measures, names, traces, and comparison. It is that which you see before you. Begin to reason about it, and you at once fall into error. It is like the boundless void which cannot be fathomed or measured. One mind alone is Buddha, and there is no distinction between Buddha and sentient things, but that sentient things are attached to forms and so seek externally for Buddhahood. By their very seeking, they lose it. For that is using the Buddha to seek for Buddha, using mind to grasp the mind. Even though they do their utmost for a full eon, they will not be able to attain it. They do not know that if they put a stop to conceptual thought and forget their anxiety, Buddha will appear before them. For mind is Buddha, and Buddha is all living things. It is not the less for being manifested in ordinary things, nor is it being greater for being manifest in Buddhas. So when we think of Buddhas, we think of this high exalted being. When you look at this, you think of it as a book. And a book is much less than Buddha. But Huang Po just told us, this book is Buddha. The Buddha that you think of as high exalted is no more or less than this book, this pinky, the green plant behind me, the sound of the voice that you hear, the ability of your ears and your consciousness to hear are all one thing. In Zen Master Sun San's teaching, we call this before thinking mind. There's many ways that it gets spoken about, but all the words are pointing to before thinking. Thinking makes my identity. Before my identity, what is it? That is the realm of Zen practice. If we are not what we think, then we need to turn inward and start looking at our inner experience. In many ways, our meditation practice is allowing inner experience to unfold without touching it, without making anything. We become aware of what's unfolding without attaching to it. So it comes and it goes. Just now, what is it? And as we just observe the unfolding, we notice the very basic truth of the Buddhist teaching, that everything is always changing. 2 weeks ago, each one of us was consumed with something that was irritating us in our lives, something that was not quite settled. Today, you likely don't even remember what it was. But 2 weeks ago, it was the most important thing. Today, we don't even remember. How many things just today were so important, and we got so hooked into the objects and conditions of our lives that we lost ourselves. We lost contact with what we really are because we cling to and attach to outside experience. Huang Po is teaching us, if we let go of that clinging, then we're free. As we watch that process unfold, we also watch our responses and reactions to it. In some ways, you can say we observe the hooks that hook us into that experience. And by observing it and being aware of it, we unhook. When we unhook, we're free. When we're hooked, we're subject to the flow and the ebbs of our outside experience. We chase after a better experience, maybe food that we like more, maybe being in contact with a person who makes us feel better about ourselves. We chase after things because we feel incomplete. We feel incomplete because we identify with the outside things that we're always chasing. And we're always a little bit less than. There's always someone else who's a little prettier, a little smarter, is a little bit better at the things that we prize or the ways we identify ourselves. There's always somebody else who seems to be doing it better. And we get lost in comparison. We get lost in our judgment. And we get lost in the opinions that usually leave us as less than. So we're always stuck being a little bit less, or sometimes a lot less, than we think we should be. And we have all these outside markers to show us, oh, I should be like that. If I only had that nicer car, or better house, or that person who would be devoted to me, if I just had that one more thing, then I'll be enough. Then my life will be complete. But think about it. How many times have you gotten that thing? And you get the thrill in that moment, perhaps, but in the next moment, you're back to being incomplete. Or you get that object that you've always wanted, but now you're afraid it will break. So you put it away on this precious shelf, and maybe it's really high up so the cats won't jump up and knock it over. And any of your friends who come to the house won't put their grubby little hands on it. And you've made it this precious little thing way up that's outside of your actual everyday life, protecting something that feels so precious. But if we can escape the conceptual mind, return to before thinking, this moment is that precious jewel. It's not some object. It's this precious moment. And all of Zen practice leads us back to this very moment. All of Zen practice brings us back to being alive right now. It might seem passive for you to be sitting there listening to my speech, but actually it's quite active. All of your attention comes to this one point. All of our experience come to this one moment of aliveness. The past is already dead. The future doesn't exist. Right now, in this precious moment, we're alive. And I suppose really what I want to express right now is that this moment is so alive and so full. When I think about it, actually the word luscious comes up. It's just so full of potential and experience. The sound of the voice, the images that come into your consciousness, the feeling of the wind as it blows on your hands and face, the pressure on your knees or on your butt, or even the tension in the upper back. Maybe you have a pain somewhere in your leg. All of this experience simultaneously alive. That's Buddha. That's us. That's our life. And it's so challenging to embrace it. And it's even challenging when we embrace it not to get lost in it. I'm looking up at the right-hand corner of my screen and I see Carrie, and he gave this wonderful Dharma talk a couple of weeks ago. And he talked about getting so caught up and so full of the moment that it became too much, and he, in a sense, was tumbling forward, because we need to be present and grounded to fully be alive and experience this moment. So our very simple practice of slowly and deeply breathing into our lower abdomen, slowly and deeply exhaling, and allowing this process of energy to be brought back into our bodies. Remember, Huang Po said we're always going outside, chasing after things. So we see that face in the mirror, and then we start to think, oh, maybe I should trim this a little bit. And oh boy, we've got all these ideas. And in that idea, we lose the genuine quality of the moment. By returning to not knowing. There's so many Zen phrases. There's so much that points us back. This beautiful phrase, not knowing is most intimate. Letting go of our ideas, our attachments, our beliefs, all the things that get in the way of just being here right now. So in our practice, rather than relying on the defenses of our psychological mind or the strength of our muscles, we develop something that we can really have faith in, something that we can count on, which is the foundation of our own existence. We don't know what it is, but with each slow breath in into our lower abdomen, with each exhalation, we're watering and we're building this power in the foundation of our Tangen, our energy garden. It's like that image, the doll in Japan, they call it the Bodhidharma doll, Daruma doll. That's how you say Bodhidharma in Japan. And it's this wooden face, really, that's carved into wood, and the bottom is rounded. So when it gets knocked over, it pops right back up. It gets knocked over this way, and it gets right back up. So as our nature is being buffeted by experience, we just return upright. And we lose the preference for being upright rather than a little bit to the side. So in the lusciousness of the moment that we're inhabiting, there's often struggle. What do I do? How can I help? How do I meet the intensity of the moment? You know, one of the things that happens for all of us is that we enter situations that we don't know what's going to happen. And in many ways, sometimes we'll meet somebody, maybe for work or in a personal situation, we'll meet someone who we've never met before. Can we fully be in don't know, in not knowing, and allow that person to reveal themselves to us, rather than us using our conceptual way of thinking to limit the other person, to put that person in a box? You know, in my work as a psychotherapist, it often comes out that as people are working on these kind of things and they're struggling to change some of the relationships that they've had, it's the people closest to them who are the most resistant to the change. Even when you're changing things that are irritating to someone else, at least I know you that way. I'm used to you being irritating. Or by you being irritating, I can classify you in a particular way and maybe put myself a little bit above you. So please don't change, because once you change, we're going to maybe become more equal. And that is scary. So in some ways, familiarity breeds the prison that we'll find ourselves in. If we do the same action over and over again, we start to get habits. And in doing things by habit, we forget to be present. So the actions is being done, but we're missing that lusciousness that exists in the moment as we fully participate. And the lusciousness is not always comfortable. It's often scary. And our cognitive mind, our conceptual mind, will defend against the overwhelm or the fear by making concepts, classifying, and putting things in categories that we think we can understand. Now, of course, this conceptual mind that we have is an amazing gift. We wouldn't be all here together right now if it weren't for the multitudes of conceptual minds that figured out how to do this amazing thing, that we can be all over the planet. There are people in the Bay Area, there are people in Europe, there are people in Asia, and all over the territory of the United States on this Zoom call right now. That didn't happen out of ignoring the conceptual mind. But story after story after story you hear. For instance, there was the man who invented the Xerox machine way back when, I suppose in the 1950s. He actually I guess he got rich from what he finally did. And he was a donor for one of the larger Zen centers in New York. And the story about him was that in his work to develop the copier machine, which we used to call a Xerox machine, he hit a wall. He couldn't figure it out. And he just had to give up. He just thought it wasn't solvable. And then he went to sleep. And that night in a dream, he figured out how to overcome the problem. And hence we started having copying machines. And copying machines led very quickly into computers. Of course, computers probably predated it some way. All these things happen simultaneously. And I've heard this story after story. By letting go of our conceptual thought, in an instant, something appears. In a way, we do all this preparation, and then we let go. And once we let go, we leave space for the unknown to appear. And our job is to be present and awake and ready. Each moment to be present, awake, and ready. And we do that by letting go. Of course, it's not an either or absolute thing, but the more we're unhooked from the chatter, the anxiety, the fears, the desires, the opinions, all the swirl of our inner cognitive mind, the more we're unhooked from that, the more able we are to respond to the freshness of this luscious moment that we find ourselves in. And yeah, sometimes it's overwhelming. Sometimes we need to retreat. Sometimes we need to step forward. But it's all working to be alive. And alive doesn't mean only being able to breathe. It means being present and fully there. Giving yourself up completely to the moment. It's reminding me as I'm saying this, there's an image from Dogen who said, firewood is firewood and ashes are ashes. When the firewood is burning, completely burn up. Each moment, completely burn up so that we're again ready for the next moment. And again, I want to just close this talk with the reminder that our practice is our path to being alive right now. Just like an athlete, it's now springtime in the United States. And if you follow baseball, all the teams are in spring training. So for the professional teams, you've got, when I think of professional baseball, I think of the men. But of course, there are women all over this country also doing the same thing. Usually it's a softball league rather than a hardball league, but it's still baseball. You've got people everywhere of all genders, of all races, of all ethnic groups. But the point is, they go to spring training. And for someone who's at the professional level, they're in their 20s. Sometimes if they're good and they can last, they're in their 30s. And they start doing the very same thing they started doing when they were 6 years old. So there's a guy or a woman who plays second base. She spends hour after hour. If somebody hits a ground ball to them, they pick up the ground ball and they throw the ball to first. They spend hours and hours, and they've been doing this for years and years of their life. But they're training to have body memory so that when the ball comes, they don't have to think. They respond and they act. So it's not willy-nilly behavior. In baseball, there's a task that needs to be done. And if you're going to meet the moment, then you follow the rules of the moment. But we train so that when we're ready to be, we train to be ready to be able to use that body memory and just respond. And in those moments, miraculous things happen. You'll see a baseball player do things that nobody believes is even possible. You watch it and you have to slow down the speed to see how it was actually done. You'll see professional athletes doing these pirouettes, or in one motion, picking the ball up and throwing it right out of their glove without any hesitation. You can't think that. You do that. And our Zen training is that same kind of training. So whether you're sitting on the cushion, you're driving your car, you're at work, you're eating dinner with a friend, or you're just by yourself looking out the window, it's all training. So when the next moment arises, you're ready. And a Zen life is a life that's ready. It's not just Zen. Zen is our particular way. But whatever you do, do it so that you're training to be here right now. Maybe it'll go the way, maybe this moment will go the way you want it to go. Maybe it won't. We prefer it to go the way we want it to go. But all of us, if you think about it, we know the experience that often it's growing out of the things that don't go the way we want them to go is the precious moment that opens up a whole phase of our lives. The breakup of one relationship with all the grief and sadness often leads to the birth of something else. The mistake that you make cooking one meal leads to the delicious meal that you cook next because you learned something. So our job is to take all of our experience, digest it, compost it, turn it into food and energy that allows us to be here right now. So thank you all for being here. Thank you for your training, because the gift of our training is not just for us to have a happier life. It's to make this world, this universe, a better place for ourselves, for others, for the plants, the animals, the rocks, the air, the trees. All of it are Buddha. So if I am Buddha and you are Buddha and the tree is Buddha and the book is Buddha and the sky is Buddha and shit is Buddha, then I am all of those things. It's an identity, I think it's called an identity equation. If A equals B and B equals C, A equals C. So I and you, if you are Buddha and I am Buddha, then you and I are one. We're different faces of the same thing. So if we can live that way with open-heartedness and appreciation for the other as we have for ourselves, this world will be incredibly different. In Buddhism, they talk about the Western paradise. In Zen, we say the Western paradise is here right now. If we break out of the conceptual prison, this moment is the Pure Land. This moment is paradise. If we live as if we're in paradise, we will make it paradise for others. And not only other humans, all sentient beings. So thank you for your practice, and thank you for your dedication to making this world a better place. Thank you all very much.